Okay, Evan, I'm gonna be redoing your video because the lines didn't show up last time. So I think what I had been talking about was um, some aspects of your pool here. So let's start with the height of your setup. So the first thing I usually tell people is to make sure that your lower arm here um, is pointed a little bit more towards the bar in the front. So you want to make sure that your arm is not bent and pointed upwards like this. So one of the biggest reasons is if you look here closely at that rope, it kind of has to do also with like how high you usually set up on the boat over the water, right? You usually don't hold your paddle a couple inches above the water because you want to keep your stroke efficient and reduce how much dead space there is between your setup and when your paddle actually catches into the water, right? So same thing here. You can see right here, because you're holding it up high, that rope is pointed upwards, right? So as you go into your catch, all this room right here between your catch and actually getting into the meat of your pool of when that rope is going to engage is what I call dead space. So from here down to here, there's a little bit more play in the rope, if you understand what I mean. So you just basically keep your lower arm starting a little bit lower so that that rope is already pointed slightly downward, so that when you actually get into your pool, you have the time between when you start your catch and when that rope is going to engage is reduced a little bit. Another thing that I would kind of suggest to you is your lower hand here is it's a little bit low on that paddle shaft for someone about your size. So I think if you bring that lower hand up a little bit, that'll help your top arm position a little bit better. So when you go into your setup, your top hand is a little bit high, so you can see it's kind of off the screen. In terms of where most people are the strongest to apply the top arm pressure, it will be a little bit lower of that for that top arm. You can see right now when you get into a really strong, when you're trying to get that top arm pressuring down a lot, you can see your top arm has that kind of that bend right here. Kind of a little bit extreme there, and it's largely because your arms are spread out that way. And so your top arm doesn't really have anywhere to go there. So try to, again, that's easily fixed by just moving that lower hand up a little bit. Now, if we go into the next portion of looking at how your core is working through your pool. So if we look at the difference between our two, my catch on the right and your catch there, right? As you're going down into the meat of your pool, that initiation, right? Your back kind of arches down a lot, kind of crumples down. And then as you go into the back end of your stroke, you kind of stay really lean forward. And you're trying to drive that paddle back. Right now, most of this motion coming back is driven by that top arm trying to push down as hard as it can. And then you finally kind of sit up a little bit as your paddles, as you're recovering. Okay? So what you want to do is try to make sure that your sitting up motion right here, when your back is actually sitting up, needs to coincide more with when you're pulling through, okay? Because that's going to make sure that all of your leg drive, okay, so that hip motion and then that sitting up motion needs to couple in better with this part of your stroke. Okay, so I think what I did in that previous video, which you don't get to see here, I'm going to try to draw or you didn't get to see earlier, I'm going to try to draw some lines, so kind of compare the difference between our body motions and our paddle, where our paddle is. Okay, so let me use these blue lines for our paddle. Okay, so I'm gonna let me start over. Okay, so I'm gonna highlight our paddle in each stage first, so that we can kind of look at the different paddle angles that we go through. Okay. So give me a sec while I finish up these lines here. But this is gonna kind of help illustrate some of the differences in our stroke here. Okay, and then if we go back to the beginning here, we'll do some different lines, different colored lines. I'm gonna basically connect your ear to your hip. Same with this side here. So each of these lines are meant to represent like the different parts of the stroke where I highlighted in blue. Okay, so the next phase is here. So both of us are kind of leaning into the catch a bit. Your body kind of goes a little bit further down as you continue. So if you watch the next phase here. So you see, once you kind of get into the catch deep enough, there's not really any point to continue leaning down onto that paddle, right? Because once your blade is fully buried, all of your motion should be concentrated in your core should be untwisting and sitting up. Okay, so you can see this next point, this third line that I drew with the paddle. So if I connect your ear, if I connect your ear to your hip, right, you can see that you're still leaning down, and you should already be fully buried at that point. And so you can see, like, for my line there, I'm not really leaning down anymore. Right now I'm concentrating my motion into that backward and sitting up motion. So from here to the next line, right, you can see for me, my head, right, you can see my head is going to start moving back. Whereas here, you can see your head is going to still continue going down. So we remove those arrows. So this next part, right, you can see my head is now, I'm going to change colors. My head is now going backwards. And I've started to sit up because I'm already into the meat of my stroke. And you can see your body still kind of collapsing down onto that paddle. So you're not really getting that sitting up and leg drive motion into that really strong part of your stroke, and instead you're trying to rely a lot on your top hand here to pressure down to push it backwards versus trying to pull it back with your body, right? And here you've finally kind of stopped leaning down on it here for that next stroke, and you can see I'm already sitting up. My ear is now back at this position. Okay. And then now when you've finished your pull, you're only up to about here, whereas I'm about that range, right? So your working range should be a little bit more sitting up a little bit sooner in your stroke on the pERG. Okay, so I'm going to clear these lines. I think that's the biggest item here, and arm placement. You know, I've seen different people do well with different arm placements. I think my suggestion of raising your lower hand is probably a little less crucial than trying to fix what you're doing with your core through the stroke there. Okay, and I think that was the biggest item for you there. Um, the core, that's the most important. Making sure you sit up a little bit better with when the power phase of your stroke is going through. And then also the setup would probably be the next big item. Making sure your arm isn't pointed upwards. I think that's it. Okay.